Witam Państwa po przerwie, a teraz o unikatowym zbiorze.
Welcome after the break, ladies and gentlemen. We will now be talking about a unique collection of photographs that document the arrival of several transportations of Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz. This talk will be delivered by Paweł Sawicki, representing the press office of the museum. The floor is yours.
Mam nadzieję, że się słyszymy.
Can you hear us? I hope you can see me now. All right. Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, depending on where you are. I am here today to talk to you about a very interesting topic. I will be talking about photographs taken by the Germans in 1944 at the Birkenau camp. And these are photographs that depict the arrival and the process of extermination of Hungarian Jews in Auschwitz. You can see the cover of a photograph album that I myself compiled. It is called Miejsce, na którym stoisz, the place you are standing at. I do apologize. I really want to make sure I can see everything all right. So just bear with me for a moment more. So once again, let me share my screen. Do bear with me. Now it all seems to be working. All right, so here in this photo, you can see the cover of this photo album that I have compiled. In this work, I wanted to compare the photographs taken back in 1944 to the present-day memorial site, and it was a huge challenge. When this idea was first floated, the idea to compare and contrast the pictures that revolve around this very short wave of deportations to Auschwitz. So the first reaction to this idea was that it would be impossible today to find all of those places depicted in the photographs, because there are few remnants of those times that have been preserved until today. This album contains 200 photographs. And it seems that the German photographers were trying to show the logistics of this action. That was something unprecedented. Yes, Jews were murdered at crematoria or gas chambers at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. So the Birkenau camp became a machine of death, and it was something that happened on an unprecedented scale and required a lot of logistical management. And I think that those German photographers were trying to show and have evidence ready for the authorities that would prove how the logistics was managed. Here you can see all the stages of the process. You can see the arrival at the ramp. This is a new ramp that was created at the Birkenau camp. For 2 years, the trains that brought deported Poles, Jews, and others to the camp arrived at the old ramp that was located halfway between Auschwitz and Birkenau. But the first transportations with the Hungarian Jews to Birkenau arrived at this brand new ramp. And so we can see photographs of people leaving the train cars. You will also be able to see the selection. You will be able to see them waiting to meet their death. And you will also be able to see photographs of those Jews and prisoners that were registered and became inmates at the camp. The only process that is not documented by these photographs was the extermination itself. So on the one hand, we can presume that the photographers could not take photos of that because that was the clandestine element. But also it might be because these photographs were created as an insider document, and those who were behind all of this knew perfectly well what happened to the Jews in the camps. They just wanted to take the photographs to prove it to the authorities that they managed the entire operation quite well. The photographs were taken in several stages. The reproductions or copies were made by the inmates. There was a photo studio that operated within the camp. Two SS officers probably took the photographs. These were officers working at the camp, so we can presume that they probably had a special permit to take the photographs, and then they collected the photographs and assembled them into an album. The album was not retrieved from the territory of the camp after the war. It was found at a different camp. And Lily Jakob, one of the liberated inmates, found the album after the liberation. She opened the album, or she saw a page just like this one, the one that you can see now, and she recognized that these photographs had been taken at Birkenau. She herself had been an inmate there, then she was relocated elsewhere. And in the previous speech, we heard a little bit about what happened to the Jews who went through the Birkenau camp, and she even recognized herself in one of the photographs taken at the B2C camp. You can see the female inmates, you can see the camp kitchen behind them in the background, and on the right-hand side, the fourth person on the left is Lily Jakob. She recognized herself. She was the one to find this album after the war, and she basically took it. The album became hers, and she owned it until the 1980s. And as the museum, we could borrow the album, but I think it is one of the most important photographic documents that depict the extermination process. The original is now kept at the Yad Vashem Institute in Jerusalem. So once again, you can see the B2C camp kitchen in the background. As I worked on this very special project, I really tried to find exactly the same spots. But remember that the landscape of the camp is entirely different today. The buildings were wiped off the face of the earth, and that is what you can see right now in the same location. There was just one or two details that allowed us to recognize that that photo was taken in this very spot. You can see the camp kitchen. Let's compare the photographs again. You can see the shape more or less of the former kitchen building, and you can see a pillar that formed part of the camp fence. So these were the two details that we recognized as we compared the two locations. You can also see the chimneys of the kitchen building that is located in the background, but you can also see the chimneys of a kitchen building in B2B. So this building was not preserved, but one chimney was preserved. You can see them one right behind the other. And that particular arrangement allowed us to exactly pinpoint the location from where the photograph was taken in the 1940s. There is another important detail, and I will go back to it in a moment, but do pay attention to this peculiar perspective. Once again, let's have a look at this one. This photograph was not taken at the level of the ground. So probably the SS officers who took the photographs were probably standing on the roof of a vehicle that they're used to move around, or some kind of platform. So during this project, I searched and found the same locations. I showed or I took photographs in the present day locations reflecting those photographs taken all those years ago. The SS officers were not professional photographers. The entire album is intended to tell a story. So you can see various parts of the project, various perspectives, and these photographs are very important to us because it is a document that tells us a lot about what the camp was like in 1944. So we can, for example, see that the SS officer was standing on top of the cargo car. Again, this confirms that the photographer had to have some kind of a permit because otherwise he would not have been allowed to take photographs from there. You can see the horizon and two slightly leaning chimneys. These are the chimneys of the crematoria. You can see some of the wooden barracks as well. You can see the railroad ramp and all of those things happening there. You can see people carrying stuff. You can see the prisoners that are waiting for their luggage. So you can see the SS officer climbed on top of the railroad car to show or to include all of that in this photograph. The building that you can see right in the middle of the background has actually been preserved. You also have the original fence, so we can actually count the poles within the fence. And with this is exactly what this spot looks like today. Again, we corrected the image for this slight tilt that was so characteristic of this photograph. The only difference is of course the kind of lens. So here, or the focus of the lens applied. But again, the location is exactly the same. You cannot see the crematoria, you cannot see the gas chamber buildings, and you can also see that the horizon is different because the trees have grown so much over this time period. But again, this is exactly the same location. Another interesting photograph that I would like to share with you, it's included in the album. This is what happened immediately before the selection. You can see a group of SS officers. There's a medical officer who is about to start the selection process. And you can see that the groups, that the Jews are being divided. You can see men and older boys on the one side and women and children on the other side. They are not entirely separated, those two groups, yet. Today we know that the men and women would probably never see each other again. And so that's how we read these photographs. You can also see a group of children standing in the corner. In this album, there is another photograph that depicts exactly the same moment, but the perspective is slightly different. It shows the row of women from the front rather than from the back, which means that the photographers could probably influence the SS officers, and they could, for example, stop all activity on the ramp in order to take the same photograph from two different perspectives to show the entire scene and the things that are happening on the ramp from the vantage point of the train car. You can see those cars that have been separated in order for the people to be able to pass in between. And then another photo was taken of the same scene, but from the ground level.
Na terenie byłego obozu Birkenau na rampie stoi wagon kolejowy, ale stoi
Right now, there is a train car at the Birkenau ramp, but it is located in a different place, so we couldn't use it as a vantage point to take the photograph. So our photographer had to climb up a ladder, but it was not tall enough. And that's why we tried to place the ladder on top of a platform. But again, we couldn't use a train car. So in this case, our colleagues from the Museum Heritage Preservation Department supported us. They allowed us to use their vehicles. So we placed a ladder on top of the vehicle in order to make sure that the perspective was just right as we took this photo. Once again, let's look at the old photo. There's another interesting detail I'd like to draw your attention to. One of the SS officers. You have the two officers standing on the right-hand side. One of them might be smoking. If you look at the position his arm is in, documents that have been preserved tell us that SS officers could not smoke while on duty. So is this a coincidence? Is he really smoking? Maybe something else is going on. There was a problem when these photographs were processed. So we basically photographed the train, the ramp, and we wanted to reproduce the scenes using those various platforms. So this is the result. So it's more or less the same perspective, although the gate is too low. But the problem is that the car left a trail. They didn't really want to use any photo processing software, because you can imagine, for example, I could take a bigger picture, a wider frame, and then I could use photo processing software to crop the image to obtain the same dimensions as the old photo. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to tweak the photos in any way. We didn't want to introduce any graphic correction. We didn't want to use Photoshop at all to remove the tire tracks that were left by the vehicle that we used to take this photo next to the ramp. So first we decided to wait for a few days for the rain and the visitors and the wind to eliminate the tire tracks. We waited for 2 weeks. We returned after 2 weeks, but still we could see the tire tracks. So we removed the tracks before we took the photos. We used brooms and brushes in order to remove or cover the tracks. And this is the final photo. So if you have a close look, you can still make out the tire tracks, but we really did our best to conceal them. Again, let's compare and contrast the two photographs of the same spot. You can also notice one interesting detail. It's not that visible here because there is not a lot of shadow here, but many of those photographs taken along the ramp were taken early in the morning. So maybe in a moment we'll see another photograph that will have that will accentuate the shadows. So in my case, I didn't want to have any visitors in this snapshot in order to convey the authenticity of the location, but I didn't want to include the people, today's visitors, in order to show what remains in this location still. So there are no people, but I wanted to take the photographs with exactly the same lighting conditions. So probably the original photos were taken in late May, and so I decided to do the same. And so you can see the series of trial and error, plenty of copies. I really tried to find the exact location, the exact frame, the exact line of the horizon distorted by the trees. So that's how I worked on preparing this album.
There is a number of photographs here which are really important, what German photographers were showing. And you could see the barracks of the Canada building, where the assets, where all the possessions of the deported prisoners were sorted. So no wooden barrack remained. So it seemed that to find an exact place where this photograph was taken was basically impossible, because there were no reference points which could show this barrack in a context. When we are analyzing these photographs, we tried to see what you could see in the background. At first glance, when we look at wooden barracks, you can see that they had chimneys,
Coś, co jest
and
strukturą
at first sight, you could see something that looked like the structure of the very barrack. But the barrack in sector 2G actually did not have any chimneys. But when you look behind the tree, on the left-hand side, you see a taller element, and these are chimneys of crematory number 4, and the small chimney on the right-hand side would be the chimney of crematorium number 5. That means that we have another point of reference which will help us to locate the barrack. So in this section B2G, you can locate the ruins of gas chambers and crematoriums, and we can see which of the barracks could overshadow the buildings. And on the one hand, we have this photograph seeing women's...
Kanada. Widzimy tą tragę, którą noszono przedmioty, i to była ta praca.
And we see the work at the Canada barrack, another aspect of extermination. So it is the aspect of looting the possessions, the looting of the possessions of the victims. But also today, we can see where the photograph was taken. This is exactly the place. Those of you who know the territory, you can see that in the background, you can see the ruins of crematorium number 4. This small line of bricks in the background are the ruins of crematorium number 4. Another photograph that can be located thanks to one detail, it is the selection place. In the picture, you can see SS officers and doctors who are selecting, and 2 women who went through selection already. They are crossing a small element which is a part of the ramp, and thanks to this small element we are able to show the photograph where the photograph was taken. Just behind the carriage, you can see the wooden barrack of the male camp. But thanks to this isolated element, this stone or this architectural element of the ramp, we can see similar structures on the other side of the ramp. We can also realize where the photograph was taken. So this is there is a similar carriage standing at the ramp today. There is a number of photographs in the album which are really interesting, and this is one more showing the work of an SS photographer. And these are 3 photographs which were taken on the road connecting the ramp of Birkenau and the other side of Birkenau camp. And these are men who are standing, 3 diverse perspectives. And please observe what's happening at the borders of the photographs. These are the photographs that actually appear both in the one and in the second. So the photographer decided to make a panorama picture, not showing a one row of people, but to show them from various perspectives. And that is why it is quite easy to locate the places where the photographies were made and to keep the panoramic structure. So these are the locations, these are the places where all other 3 posts of the fencing are seen. They remain until today. On the right-hand side, you can see the 3 pillars, 3 poles which are in front of the wooden barracks. and you are able to take the same picture today, showing what remained. And something that is really important is that the majority of photographs in the album were not taken from the level of the ground, but from an elevation, because those which were taken from the level of the ground did not work. That is why I thought that perhaps I should stand up, perhaps have a ladder on which I could climb, and these perspectives were similar to those which you could see in the photographs taken during the camp life. Some of the photographs were not perhaps directed, but they're quasi-portraits, showing some types of people, like Orthodox Jews, for example, and SS officers who found somebody of very short posture, taking photograph of them, and a woman standing close to the carriage. Obviously, we are not able to find the exact place, but I will use the original carriage on a ramp, and the picture that somehow refers to that, showing that perhaps such thing could take place at a ramp. Another photograph from the group of strange portraits, and this shows some ideology, some types of faces or types of people which the SS officers wanted to show. And here, this photograph displays also an architectural detail and people walking on the road between the sectors B2C and B2D. And this is the gate, and this is the place, what it looks like. Also, you can see the fencing and also the road, which is here. So it is exactly where the photographs was taken, one of the most important places for the album. And you have already seen this photograph. It showed the moment of selection. This exceptional moment, not only for the history of Hungarian Jews or any other Jewish transpots, because also the transport from the occupied fronts was coming there, or from the occupied Netherlands. So, for example, with the family of Anna Frank. But the moment of selection was a special moment from the Jewish memory. But because suffering was also the history of the Jewish prisoners, Polish, Roma, but only the Jews were going through the selection process, and the majority of them were sent to gas chambers, and the majority of them were murdered. Many of them came to the camp realizing that their family members had just been murdered in the gas chambers. That is why today we have this place, and this is the place where the selection was going on, and this is this moment here, and you can see the pace of selection. You can see the doctor Hans Stier, who was working through selection, and also in the background you can see more people walking towards the group of men in the background, and we can clearly calculate walking through this area how many seconds it took for a doctor to make all the selection. And today we have this very place, and an important detail for the location of this shot. Look at the building in the background and the chimney, and the middle chimney is placed against the building of the washing room. And this is the same shot with the same number of the posts in the fencing was taken today. And this is the place where the selection was made. Another photo showing how the posts, the pillars in the fencing can help us to organize the space. This is 1944, and this is the same place today. And only thanks to the location of the fences, you can find exactly the place, and they're located in the same places. So something that is pointed out by the recipients of my work, it is the juxtaposition of the two spaces, not only the camp in 1944, you can see the selection, and also doctors finish off selecting women, and also you can see a girl with her head covers. This is
albumie.
we know that she survived. So this is also a photograph. We have also a photograph from the forest close to crematorium. We could see her mother and her siblings. You can also see the push carts for children and also the possessions that will be taken away. So you can see the background, you can see the truck and people walking towards the gas chambers. You can see a significant number of details that help us analyze and understand the photograph. And this is the place that is empty, and this emptiness, no, the complete absence of people, it is something that is especially striking. And this is another element that shows the connection between these two images, the photograph full of people and the photograph with their complete absence. This is the contemporary photo with a fragment of the ramp and also the posts, and also we can move to 1944 where we can see what was going on, the truck and people in the background. So this was going on at the same time. Many things overlap, and photographer taking the pictures, men, women, and also the barracks of the female camp, and also some interaction between the SS officer and the man over there, and something goes on there. So, and you can see all the phases of the process of accepting the transport and selection. So we move towards the women who have been selected, and after the selection they were moved to the camp. We can see the kitchen in another place, and thanks to the chimney and the fencing and the wall, we can know exactly where the photograph was taken. And this is the place where the two kitchens were located. The photographs of people going to gas chambers, grandmothers with their grandchildren, grandsons, granddaughters. We see that they were completely unaware what was supposed to happen. The Jews were thought that this is just displacement. They saw the barracks, they saw other people. So the whole story of displacement seemed to be realistic, and the hope that was given to them. Obviously, you can see that they are uncertain looking at the photographers, but they are not in fear. They do not look like the victims of some violence. So there are also fences of the fencing, and also so this is the photograph that was taken here, and the level of the road is different than the level of the road in 1944. And when this album was created, when the photographs were accumulated for it, I had a great dilemma how to show some spaces which are so important for this history if we cannot find their exact location. And this is one of the examples here. These are the Hungarian Jews waiting for death very close to crematorium number 4. So you can see the barracks in the background, but we do not know which place exactly it is. That is why I decided that what is sufficient for me is just the close likelihood that it was here. We can say that this gentleman with a bottle, with a canister, is walking downward somewhere. And we know that in the forest, just close to crematorium number 4, that there was a pond there with water. So there was a history that that was perhaps taken here. So obviously you can see the fence in the background, but is it exactly the same place? We can guess that it might have been the place, but what mattered for us was just to be close. But there is one photograph which basically will stay with me forever. It is a photograph when we do not see faces, but it is a picture of an elderly woman with some children. Perhaps these are her grandchildren or other family members. And this is one of the most striking pictures in this group of documents. And it seems that to find this place is not difficult. So we can see a fragment of a wooden barrack. We can see 2 poles and the fencing. And it seems that it was exactly the place that we meant, but it is not the place, because the barrack in the background did not look like that. And there was no other place currently close to the fencing where we had a similar placement of the posts, which means that we are not able to find the exact location of the photograph. So we can see the rails for transporting various things between the ramp and B3 section, but this photograph cannot be located. So there is a number of photographs which are in the album, which are worth remembering when you watch them. It is worth juxtaposing them against other picture, because first of all, it is the Miliako album that we can juxtapose these photographs, but also there are Balajtobuz photographs which they documented other buildings, and also we are dealing with this picture, with this photograph. We can see women, children standing in front of a building, and also there are rails in the background. So we are probably at the ramp, and so probably you could see crematorium number 3. So there is another photograph that is in the album, which is shown in detail. There are posts of the fencing and the remnants of the building. So we are able to show which posts were obscuring the chimney and the hole with the furnaces. But you can also reach for another photograph to see the very building, the gas chamber and crematorium number 4, or perhaps number 2. So we can juxtapose these buildings with other photographs taken at another moment, which is also very important, very significant for detailed comparison of the picture. An important document are the aerial photographs. And this is the photograph taken at the end of May 1944 by South African aviation sections, troops, which were involved in aerial reconnaissance. They were ready to prepare documentation of IGA-Farben plans, but also they took the photographs of Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, Auschwitz III, and these photographs were discovered after the war, and many details revealing the exact placement of the buildings were found. You can see the railway ramp here.
Widać krematoria, widać miejsca stosów
and you can
spaleniskowych.
also the gas chambers, crematoriums, and also you can see M2 bunker so which was also included for use on that scale of deportation of the Hungarian Jews. So again, juxtaposing contemporary pictures and those taken in the camp in 1944 and the aerial photographs, we can talk about these events from various perspectives.
I to jest album.
There's another document. This is a photo or an album of one of the commanders of the camp. And so this, of course, is not directly connected to the extermination of Hungarian Jews. These are photographs from the Międzybrodzie resort for SS officers. You can see officers and women from support divisions. You can see the interactions between them. So these are important documents that tell us more about the world of the perpetrators. And all of that was taking place mere 30 kilometers away from the camp. However, according to new interpretations by some historians, this photo was taken during an event organized by the Auschwitz camp. It was an event for people responsible for the extermination of Hungarian Jews at Auschwitz camp, where 420,000 people were deported within a matter of days. You can see the commander, it's the third SS officer on the right. You can also see Hess, who was the head of the garrison at the time. He was sent to Auschwitz once again to supervise the extermination of the Hungarian Jews. You can see Josef Mengele. So you can see the first row of the officers, but then in the background you have truck drivers and those who dropped Cyclone B into the gas chamber. So this photograph is probably closely linked to the history of Jews deported from Hungary, and it shows you more about the administrative circles and the administration workers who made all of that happen. So again, this you can see here, these are people who are celebrating the successful delivery of a project that they were entrusted with. And it seems just like your regular corporate event that you hold in order to celebrate the achievement of your annual KPIs. And here you can see a photograph of two brothers, the brothers of the girl who found this document and preserved it for the world. Zelik and Srul, these are the two boys, Zelik and Srul Jacobs. So many years ago, when the memorial site changed its offices, we decided to use or to create a new logo for the memorial site. And of course, the history of Auschwitz is the history of huge numbers of 1,300,000 deportees and 140 Polish deportees, 21,000 Soviet inmates, and many more huge numbers, 25,000, 100,000. These are abstract numbers, but they contain individuals. And it's our mission to preserve the memory of every single individual. It's our task to preserve the land where all of this happened in order to teach about their history and to commemorate them. And I think that by looking at those photographs, by comparing the old photographs with the contemporary photographs, all of this really tells you more about the current mission of the museum, of the memorial site that commemorates the victims and preserves the memorial site for future generations. Thank you very much for looking at the photos with me. The album is available from our online store in Polish and English and in several other languages. So you're welcome to look at it. You're welcome to use it as you walk along the Birkenau grounds. Just pay close attention. When I started working on this album, I didn't think that I would be able to find all of those locations, but I did. All of those places are being preserved by the museum, and it's enough to show those places to people, to tell them more about the history of the things that happened within the Birkenau camp. Thank you very much for taking out the time to take part in our session. Thank you very much for this very interesting and thought-provoking presentation. This album is a very special publication. This juxtaposition of contemporary photographs and old photographs taken back in 1944 by SS officers. All of this opens our eyes to the fact that those things did happen right there. It took you a lot of time. It was a huge challenge to create this special publications. So once again, Paweł, thank you for your effort and thank you for this talk. Before we move on to the next presentation, we'll take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at 18 hours and 35 minutes. Thank you very much. 6:35, we'll be back.